Kia ora, Matt. How are you today?
Good, Esther. Good. Yeah, no, it's a lovely day today here at iFly, as you can tell by my sports wall. It's a lot more interesting than my actual wall, so I thought I'd pretty it up.
Okay, so you're joining us from iFly office, are you, today?
Yes. I spent a lot of years meeting online, and I thought, well, instead of having a blank wall of my boring office, which has no windows, I thought I'd jazz it up with a sports wall and make it look like we're playing the All Blacks or something. So it seemed to go down well.
Awesome. So we'll jump straight in. I've asked everybody what made you decide to run. So just for those listening, they'll know that you've been on council for one term. And
Yep.
What's made you decide to run again, Matt?
Yeah, it's a bloody good question. Well, actually, I was probably, other than yourself, I was the other one that said, I don't know if I'm running or not. You said emphatically you weren't going to run. I said, I don't know. And I was amazed at how many people actually were so confident with how they were going to run. But, you know, I balance council work, which, as we know, is a pretty big job, 25, 30 hours a week, with running iFly and young family. So for me, it was a case of, gee, have I got the ability to balance all of these plates in the air for another 3 years? And so I actually sat down with my family first and foremost, but I sat down with my business manager and a few of my key staff to go, hey, look, here's where I'm at. What's it been like for the last 3 years for you guys? Because ultimately, with me being absent from the business or from the family, it does have a huge impact on those people around you. And it's quite selfish in a way, standing for council. So they all were really supportive, more so supportive than I was feeling in terms of the confidence to stand again. So that is what really gave me the confidence to say, okay, these guys have got my back. I can have another crack at it. And you know, it wasn't up until the last week.
Or they just want you out the house, Matt. Either way. I'm really kidding. They've got
I think you actually, yeah, okay, you got me. That's exactly that.
So you're not going to be giving anything up. You've just explained that for you it's about prioritizing, and for those listening, it is definitely a big job. And I think it can be as big as you want it to be, can't it? You know, like if we wanted to, we could work 70 hours a week on this stuff. Easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Could. So, and look, that's where you lean on your other councillors as colleagues as well. You know, and when I first came into council, I thought, okay, I need to know everything, don't I? Well, actually, no, you lean on the councillors that actually have expertise in certain areas. And that's how, you know, we run our organisations and our teams outside of local government. You lean on the people with the expertise and the skills in certain areas. And that's certainly what I've done in the last 3 years, is gone, okay, I'm not an expert at that, but I can have a chat to that person who is an expert, bring me up to speed, or, you know, follow their lead in a lot of cases. You know, a lot of the Wanaka guys will ring me or you and they'll say, okay, issue in Queenstown. What do you think? Give me the summary. What's the bullet points? Which way should I go? And so a lot of that does happen, and we'll do the same over in Wanaka. You know, what's really important to Upper Clutha, Community Board, those guys. So I think that's really important, because you can't know it all and you can't do it all.
Yeah, good. So let's just differentiate then governance and management. So you just kind of touched on a few things there. There's been a lot of talk, obviously this term, which we've been aware of being around the table and listening to our community, that, you know, we know that governance should be steering the organisation. We sometimes feel that that doesn't always happen. You have mentioned in previous interviews that communication is an issue that you see with QLDC, and also that you don't always feel heard. So can you just maybe speak to like the governance aspect of it, and kind of, you know, you're standing again, so how might that look different in your view next term? Yeah.
Well, we've got to change the leadership for a start, and that's always going to change, good or bad. It's going to change something. We're going to have new elected members coming through as well. That's going to change a few things. So just that change alone is going to make a difference. And we don't necessarily know whether it's a good or a bad difference, but it's going to be different. I think fundamentally for me, you know, I've been in boards and I've worked in businesses and seen that governance structure versus that delivery mechanism of the operation. And what's fundamentally missing a lot of the times within local government and probably central government is that level of trust. When you have a small organisation, you know, if I'm running a business as an example, what I try and do is I try and bring that level of trust so that I'm not just the boss, I'm not the leader, I'm not the one who makes all the decisions. Um, the decisions are made collectively. So there's buy-in and there's trust in the fact that you're not going to go for this got you moment where I'm going to put you down because you don't know as much as I do. And in politics and in government, and I've said once before, governments, local and national, have a challenge with saying sorry and admitting faults. And I think, anyone that knows anything about leadership goes, actually, that's a strength. When you can be humble, when you can actually go, hey, you know what, we cocked that up. We know we cocked it up. We got the messaging wrong as well. But here's what we're doing about it. And it keeps people in the loop, keeps people understanding, okay, they're trying their best. They're aware of the situation. They're not trying to hide the fact that they made a mistake. And that's just fundamentally missing from local government and central government. And that's what I've really struggled with that. And I have no problem saying to you, Esther, I cocked that one up. I got that so wrong. I apologise. Let's move on. And next time I'll consult with you before I open my mouth. Those sorts of things are just fundamentally missing. And I do struggle with that.
So let's explore that a bit then, because we're one of 12. We're a team of one of 12. We have situations sometimes and historically where things haven't always gone the way that it's been anticipated. So there might be like an overspend, or there might be a situation where councillors have to make decisions and they feel quite hamstrung. We've just kind of traversed a lot of the stuff that local council and central government maybe doesn't do well. So in terms of governance moving forward, what are some of the things that you see maybe systemically that could be put in place that we've even talked about this year that can kind of shape that differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's that trust piece. When we talk about trust, how do you trust a system to work? If you don't have trust that information is going to be flowing through, so that you've got the right information in front of you to make those hard calls. And that's something we've seen in certain issues. Other issues, you've got staff members in departments that are amazing, and they can't wait to give you more information so you can make the right judgment call. But I've found there's other departments within council where that's not the case, and they don't help you make a decision, which then draws that divide between governance and operations. What I'd love to see is actually we mandate certain update periods. That trust between us as governance and staff is not going to get better unless we can actually trust each other to hand over the information that we need. And now that goes both ways too. We need to be trusted with that information that we're receiving. So we can't go and dump it in the public eye if it's not ready yet, because that then burns that bridge with our staff. Staff are trying to do a really good job. They handle the information with care, knowing full well that the information in the wrong hands can go the wrong way really quickly. They've got to get their organisation ducks in a row, and we've got to make sure that we deliver it properly. So elected members have a responsibility to build that trust as well. And the only way we can do that is actually, we've talked about this, and I don't know with you specifically, Esther, but I've always been a fan of beers and barbecues. So you can actually just learn who that person is. And I've got close relationships, and every councillor probably got close relationships with certain staff members, and that's how you get stuff done. But if you don't have that fundamental trust, that's where it all falls over really quickly.
Okay. So thinking back to the one of 12, we're going to have either the incumbent mayor or a new mayor, and we're going to have different councillors and probably some incumbents as well. What qualities are you looking for in the mayor that's going to be, whoever that might be? What qualities and characteristics do you think is important for you to be able to work with them to the best of your ability to create what our community wants from us?
They've got to have a vision, and they've got to bring us into it. So right from the start, first week, go right collectively, what's our vision? What's our goal going to be as a team for the next 3 years? And treat it like a team. It doesn't mean we all have to agree. We don't have to all get on in terms of our thinking, but understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's really important, and give everyone a chance to speak, and make it. When I look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, let's just say the second pillar is psychological safety or psychological needs. And I don't feel governments, and I'm not just critical of this council, but every council, there's not much psychological safety in amongst all that. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm a victim of that, but a strong leader should make it safe for anyone to say whatever they need to say, and have a period to have their time. And also make sure that others aren't dominating in the conversation and sucking the oxygen out. They've still got to stay professional. Regardless of who you are, you've got to have that professionalism. You've got to bring that to the table every single day, no matter how hard it gets. And you can get angry, you can get frustrated. But if you don't respect the people across from you, the war's already over. So, for a leader, whoever that is going to be, that's what we expect. And I expect that outside of council too. So I demand that sort of leadership outside of the council work in my day job. If I sit on any boards, I've had some horrible bosses. I think we've all experienced horrible bosses. We know what it's like. They operate in solo. They keep secrets. They make you feel belittled, small. They make you feel dumb, stupid. And all the good ideas are theirs, all the bad ideas are yours, right? So we've seen it. We know what bad leadership looks like. If you're coming in with that mindset of I'm going to rule the roost and I'm going to tell you all how to do it, just don't even stand for mayor, because that's not what our community wants. So anyway, that's my thoughts. A little bit passionate about that one.
And you didn't think about standing for mayor?
No, I just don't have the bandwidth for it, to be honest. And look, it takes a balance of hard skills and soft skills. I've done a lot of work around shaping my leadership, and my soft skills are certainly there now. And I think I've got, a better communication style than I used to have, and a structure of how I build performing teams. But the hard skills is why you have to be a councillor in the first place. You've got to learn about the policies and the legal frameworks that you're actually got to try and solve. And, big finances, 200 and something odd $1 million a year in operational expenditure, and then capital expenditure on top of that, and big team. You've got 500-600 odd staff. Not that you're dealing with those people, but it's a big organisation, right? And you've got to be up for the job. You can't just think, oh, one day I can do a better job, but I've got no background and experience in leadership. So, but I think I can do it better. So, yeah, you've got to be right for the job, and I don't think I'm right for the job yet.
Okay. So I guess when we think about the governance aspect of it, which is our role, and some of the criticism that we've faced, rightly so, about governance and how that's shaped moving forward, our ability to influence. So we've talked about our voice, our ability to influence, etc. We have different components of how we can do that, how we can raise our voice and amplify issues. And I think we've each tried to do that in our own way. In your first term, you haven't been a chair of a committee. Is that something that you're thinking that you would like to do next term, so that you can help facilitate that? Or what does that look like? Yeah,
potentially. Obviously it's a step up in terms of your homework that you've got to do. You've got to know exactly what's going on. I've chaired a lot of hearings panels, and I've actually really enjoyed that responsibility of being able to chair the hearings panels. And if we just take those, for example, it's a great opportunity to test your leadership skills, if you like, in sharing and letting members of the public have their say. And a lot of them are going to be very passionate about the topic that they've come to submit and speak on. So you've got to manage that really well. And I've actually quite enjoyed that. And you've got to balance the needs of the people with the panel that's in the room and the staff as well. So, I could definitely see myself chairing. I do it in a day job now. But a lot of the times when I chair, I try and pass on and delegate a lot of this responsibilities to all of the panel. Because again, it's a team effort. It's not just one person that has all the power and the speaking stick. It's got to be it's got to be well managed. But at the same time, you've got to hear everyone's voices.
And what role do you think ego plays in local politics? So, people come along and they're community members from all walks of life, and they put their face maybe on a banner or a sign. What role do you think ego plays, and do you have one?
Oh, I definitely have one. I think it's a negative thing in politics, to be honest with you. I see ego and confidence as two different things, and I see ego as being a negative thing, and confidence. There's nothing wrong with being confident, knowing your stuff. and you've got the background and the experience, and you can articulate yourself really well about that certain topic, but you're also open to other people's ideas, and you're willing to change if you hear a better idea or outcome than the one that you had in your mind when you entered the room. An ego, on the other hand, is very closed. So they already know the answers. They've already got it made up. They already know exactly what they have to do, but they don't understand the framework or the game that they're playing. So you see it so many times, and it's worse in politics, where you've got these people that's potentially standing and or in council already. They know everything, and as soon as they're tested on their stance, and they're ticking in their mind, and they're going, "Oh, actually, I think I might be wrong," they can't move from that stance or that position. They've already said they're right. They've taken that position. Now, how can they backtrack and go, actually, I think you're right? Because they don't have that humbleness to them because their ego's taken over. So, yeah, ego exists in politics. It exists within councils for sure. Is it a good thing? Absolutely not. Is confidence a good thing? Yes. Everyone that's confident, I respect. I mean, look at yourself. You don't have an ego, but you're extremely confident because you know your stuff. And that builds respect from the people that work with you and the people around you. Egos, that just sends you down this pathway of psychological unsafety. So it's yeah.
Thank you.
Do I have one? Yeah, maybe I do.
Yeah, well, and the reason I asked the question is because politics is fraught with ego globally. And I think if we don't ask that question, we kind of miss a whole aspect of politics. And I think, local politics, we don't really think of ourselves as politicians. Like we come to the table usually for the right reasons, and sometimes it might be misguided, or sometimes it might be naive, or sometimes it might be completely right. But ego often does get in the way. So it's interesting to ask the question and see how people identify with it and see it, with around the table in global politics, and whether it can be helpful or hindering. So that's kind of why I asked the question, I guess.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? You go much deeper with it.
Well, and I think,
and that's probably a lot of the wars that we have around the world is probably because of ego. Anyway.
Yeah, and everyone has one. So it's, what are we attached to in terms of the way people see us? And that's how I would kind of describe an ego. So do you have any kind of worldview or kind of political kind of worldviews or theories that you align with? So I'm not looking for how you voted. That's not the point of the question. It's more to kind of for people to understand, how your background, how your view of the world is helps you to navigate decision making and outcomes.
Capitalist socialist debate, isn't it? I grew up in a hardworking Chinese family, 3 older sisters, and you got what you got given because you worked hard for it. And so that's really shaped my way of thinking. I came to Queenstown with a Toyota Corolla, beat up Toyota Corolla, and nothing in my bank account. And now I own a tourism business here, and I worked hard for it, and no one can take that away from you. Where does that sit? No, maybe that sits in the capitalist space, but at the same time, I'm sitting here as a councillor going, we need to uplift the whole community at the same time. I'm one of those annoying voters that swings left and right. And sometimes I swing far left and sometimes I swing far right. And I think I've voted for every political party that we have in existence today. And as you get older and certain things shape you and you understand a bit more about the political system, I guess that sort of shapes you. I guess what I would say I am is, and I'll use the example of maybe Tipene O'Regan. That's probably a really good example because he is for his people, but he had the smarts and the brains to do one of the best deals there is in New Zealand for his iwi. Rightly or wrongly, and I'm sure at the time his community probably weren't happy with him settling for what he settled with, but now they're one of the most successful iwis in the country. That's the sort of leadership that I follow, that fairness to all people, but you've got to be smart about it. You've got to take what's given to you. You can't just keep on fighting forever. Take what's given to you and then grow that within yourself. Grow it within your own community through, reading what's happened in the past and reading a little bit of the future. So you've got to be a little bit of a crystal ball gazer as well. But I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of how I've been shaped.
Yeah, it's great. And I think, our political ideologies can help and they can hinder. And I think, for example, I think what's held me back from standing again is that I'm happy to say openly, I'm not a fan at all of our coalition government and what they're doing. I believe they're dismantling environmental safeguards and Te Tiriti safeguards. I find it very frightening, and the speed at which it's happening is, I think, is going to have long-term detrimental effects. So, I look at what we can achieve in our ability to influence at a local level with that kind of coming down at us, and I find that really hard. And it's much of what you just spoke about, where as a politician you do have to go, well, what are we being offered? Because we're being offered a regional deal, we're being offered bills that we don't yet understand around fast tracking, and maybe that's all the more reason why I should be around the table, because I'm concerned about it. But at the same time, I feel that we have such little control that that's so. I guess without rambling, it's a good point you make around at what point do you take what you're given and try and work with it, rather than hold on tight to like a political ideology that is out of reach.
Yeah. I mean, it's hugely challenging, and I hear your frustration, because I've publicly said it as well, that I hate the squeeze that we're getting. And this political football and local government's an easy punching bag for central government, especially coming up to elections. We're going to hear it more and more around rates capping and around local governments need to spend less. Don't get me wrong, that's true. But the majority of what we're spending is basically because we have to, because that's being mandated by central government legislation, right? But that legislation keeps on moving all over the place. So, to your point, we've got to take what we've got and just move on and try and make a better future out of, the hand we're dealt. But the challenge that I'm having at the moment is I don't know what hand we're being dealt. That's the real challenge for us, right? Is as a councillor and anyone that's thinking about running for council, I think the future of local government is at risk. We actually don't know where our power lies. Or we really, the way I see it, is we get given an order and we get told to deliver it, but you're not going to get any money to deliver it. The only way you're going to make it is through rates. And look, that model is completely out of step with where we are at right now, and we know that. And the regional deal, the only thing I'm hoping for is that we can find financial levers that actually take that burden off the ratepayers. That's the only thing I'm really interested in. Yep, exactly.
And we know we've had decades of mismanagement when there's no point in playing the blame game. We know that there's been underinvestment. We know that what has worked in the past is no longer actually serving us. So, I mean, is there anything that you did want to kind of say about rates? Because, part of the campaigning is around capping rates, and there's a really strong argument for it. There's also other countries and jurisdictions that we can look to where capping rates, amongst other issues, has actually meant that councils have gone bankrupt. And that just shows us actually what many people have pointed out, is that we're not being responsible with our finances, essentially. But I mean over the long term. I don't mean in the short term, 2 to 3 years. I mean, 50 years, we have mismanaged that. So, is there anything that you wanted to say on the complexity of rates at all?
Oh, that's a big topic, isn't it? Capping rates is an interesting one, because I think as a soundbite and a headline in the newspaper, it sounds fantastic. And, for a national politician, a central government politician to say, let's cap rates. And they know full well what part of the rates they'll be capping. And it'll probably be about 15 to 20%. The other 80%, which is your core services, they won't cap that. That's your three waters. That's your roading, that's your waste treatment and your rubbish collection, all that sort of stuff. Those core services are excluded from rates capping as far as I'm aware. So while it sounds great as a soundbite, just think about, the detail and behind what that means. All they're trying to do is win elections. That's it. They just want to get in for another term. And I'm not, just picking on the current government. I'm talking about every government. That's why the 3 years election cycle was so bad for us, because they just flip-flop. So that's the reality of it. you're not going to get your rates any cheaper than they are now. It's just going to keep on rising.
Well, you might, but you might have another bill from elsewhere.
It'll be split, right? It'll be a tax, or it'll be a water rate instead. So it won't necessarily be your council rates. But if what I also want to do is maybe just break down, the increase in rates and what's actually impacting those. And it's boring as anything. But this is the reality: is inflation's been massive. So we know that, and 7%. When I joined council in 2022, inflation was 7 point something percent. And if inflation doesn't go down, it just keeps going up. So that increase is baked in. So your rates, through inflation, just keep getting baked in every year. Borrowing, we've got I think $600 and something odd $1 million in borrowing. So we've got to service that debt, and some of that debt shouldn't be there. I genuinely believe, but that was a decision of other councils. And then you've just got basic replacement costs. So that's where the other third of your rates is going from. So. It's a really challenging discussion about rates, because if you do try and cap your rates, you're going to lose out on infrastructure. So those replacement costs through depreciation, you're going to find in 10 years' time, everything's going to be breaking and you haven't got money to replace it. That's the reality of it. Can we reduce our borrowing? Yeah, exactly, right? So yes, we can reduce our borrowing as if we're borrowing for, glamour projects and champagne ideas, that's where we can save a little bit of money. But, you can't really do much about depreciation and inflation. Those things are pretty fixed. And that's why I'm just so hell-bent on another revenue stream other than rates. And tourism has got a huge amount to play. And I get really sick of this rhetoric that tourism doesn't pay its way. And I've got a lot more insight than most people into how tourism pays its way. So whether you're just taking, basic rates, for our commercial rates, it's about 40 grand a year. The amount we pay in business tax and GST, massive. All of my staff, they pay tax to the government, huge amount. $1.7 billion in GST, I think, for the international tourism market. Now Queenstown sees a third of that. So you can start to figure out, it's what, $600 million in GST a year this town creates for tourism. And how much do we get back? We get bugger all back. And that's what really annoys me, is that, your rates are actually working dollar for dollar. Your rates are actually working pretty hard. But when you think about your taxes for our district, your taxes are pretty lazy. They're not really delivering much in terms of healthcare, education, roading, all the big housing, all the big issues we're seeing today is because our tax dollar isn't working hard enough, because we're a small destination, we're a small regional town, and that's frustrating as heck, because the government plays this football with our industry saying, tourism, you need to give back more. I'm like, well, how much more can you give? These tourism businesses are suffering, and we're not getting rich off tourism, by the way. It's a hard slog, and the last 5 years have been bloody hell, to be honest with you. And to get that sort of message from both Labor and national government saying, tourism, you need to pull your weight. Well, hey, how about you be transparent with how much tourism produces for this country, and how about you give some back? The international visitor levy is about $200 million a year. That's a massive pot. And you'll know about this, but half was supposed to go to conservation, the other half was supposed to go to infrastructure for councils that are in high tourism destinations. You know as well as I do, Queenstown Lakes District Council has had no money from that pot. Now, you cannot tell me we're not a heavily impacted tourism destination and that council needs that money to build infrastructure for tourism. So, the transparency from central government is in my view, a little bit of a political game that they play, knowing full well they've got all the power over local government. We've got to be very careful with what we say and what we do, because they hold the strings and we're the puppet. So probably got a little bit frustrated there, Esther.
Good. So listen, we're probably towards the end of it. So why don't we just consider what parting comments that you would like to leave for those watching today?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, you guys are smart people out there. The silent majority, which is 80-90% of you, you know who the good people are, who the bad people are going to be, and you'll be able to tell straight away based on what their promises are going to be, whether that's true or not. The reality is in the next 3 years, think about standing. I know it's challenging. I know it's hard work. I know it's limiting in terms of day and income and those sorts of things. But if you have got the time, please stand, especially if you're coming from that diverse background. So if if you're come from a different nationality, you come from a different background culturally to what we see in our elections right now. John's over 50 probably, isn't that the the joke around local government, is that there's more Johns over 50 than there are people under 50 standing for council these days. I'd love to see more young people standing for council, because ultimately you guys are the ones that should be shaping the community's future, not the ones that have had their turn already. So yeah, you got 3 years. Think about standing and do it for the right reasons.
Awesome. Well, listen, best wishes for your campaign. Hope it all goes well, and thank you so much for giving up your time today to do this.
No worries. Thanks for talking. Cheers.